Every year, Apple inaugurates a modern batch of iPhones that appeal to regular users and fanatics. And this year won't be any different. Also again, Apple will carry a high-profile circumstance in September where it'll inaugurate a new iPhone, this time in the aspect of the iPhone 14. Are you excited to know about it? Keep watching the video till the end. Here we begin. Even though the iPhone 13 is yet the new child in space, stories have already painted a picture of what to anticipate from the so-called iPhone 14. What will the iPhone 14 be called? Provided that the iPhone inaugurated in 2021 was clearly branded as the iPhone 13, we anticipate the 2022 iPhone to be the iPhone 14. Whether or not Apple ever reimburses for the S branding continues to be discerned. Still, rumors imply the 2022 iPhone will be a large enough upgrade to guarantee a new number completely. There's furthermore chance that Apple eases the numbers on the iPhone line entirely, and new iPhones are established completely by their length, Pro or non-Pro in year. Again, this would fit what Apple has accomplished with the iPad lineup over the past assorted years. What features and specs does the iPhone 14 have? Let's talk about everything in detail. No notch. The largest modification that we presently anticipate with the 2022 iPhone is the disposal of the notch cutout. The notch layout was initially inaugurated with the iPhone X and has remained exact since then. The notch is where Apple houses its detectors for aspects like Face ID. Credible Apple reviewer Ming-Chi Kuo broadcasts that Apple will lower the notch in 2022, beginning with the high-end iPhone 14 Pro. Kuo interprets the layout modification as a punch-hole design. Meanwhile, Bloomberg's Mark Gurman has noted that the iPhone 14 has established to promote a complete redesign. Also, Kuo explains that the punch-hole layout will barely arrive at fruition if Apple's prototyping and output go according to the proposal. Apple's recent objective is to bring the hole punch layout only to the high-end iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max. As such, the basic iPhone 14 will remain the notch layout unless Apple surpasses product yield objectives. If the punch-hole layout sounds common, that's because it's presently utilized on several high-end Android flagships. So it makes sense for Apple to accept this layout with the iPhone 14. On the iPhone 14 Pro, the punch hole would feature the camera that's presently uncovered in the notch. What continues to blur is the destiny of Face ID. Apple may evacuate Face ID in endorsement of under-display Touch ID. Do you know about the technologies currently located in the iPhone's notch? Well, let me help you with it. Some of the technologies utilized in the phone's notch are an infrared camera, food illuminator, proximity sensor, ambient light sensor, speaker, microphone, front camera, dot projector. The valued analyst Ross Young still has proposed a bit more elements for the layout of the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max. According to Young, Apple is utilizing a hole plus pill design on the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max. Touch ID. While earlier iPhone 14 stories implied that Apple would fetch under-display Touch ID to the iPhone, this no longer seems to be the outbreak. Instead, more new reporting from Ming-Chi Kuo indicates that Apple has been compelled to postpone the under-display Touch ID to 2023 rather. According to Kuo, Apple has confronted lower-than-expected development progress in its endeavor to incorporate Touch ID into the iPhone's array. It's also possible that Apple takes a small ambitious strategy and incorporates Touch ID into the iPhone's power button, related to the iPad Air and iPad mini. But eventually, Touch ID is not anticipated to be an iPhone 14 detail this year. No camera bump. According to Prozer, at least a few prototypes of the iPhone 14 will not show a camera bump. Presently, the iPhone headlines a protruding camera bump because of the thin layout of the iPhone and the crucial thickness of camera elements. Prozer announces Apple will be prepared to avoid the camera bump with the iPhone 14 by giving rise to the iPhone itself being thicker. Camera improvements. The iPhone 14 will furthermore encompass stunning modifications to the front-facing camera, according to Kuo. The largest modification will be boosted to the front-facing camera's autofocus attributes. More elements here are blurred, but the front-facing iPhone camera has the means to get on the end-mesh to the rear camera. In phrases of the rear camera, Kuo announces the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max will be boosted to 48 megapixels, an improvement from the 12 megapixel sensor in iPhone 12. Although the detector is 48 megapixels, output pictures from the iPhone may however be 12 megapixels in determination. Comparable to some Android phones, Apple could utilize a creative scaling algorithm that seizes the raw 48 megapixel data and establishes a 12 megapixel output picture with more elements and less noise. Quo understands that the video camera operation will also be boosted for the iPhone 14, supporting recording 8K for the first time. Screen sizes. Quo also indicates that the iPhone 14 will not comprise a mini-form component like the iPhone 12 and iPhone 13. Rather, Quo indicates that Apple will propose 4 iPhones in 2 varied screen sizes, 6.1 inches and 6.7 inches. So it could be, for instance, the iPhone 14 and iPhone 14 Max, then the iPhone 14 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It'll be tragic to recognize that the 5.4-inch form aspect was postponed after 2 years, but summaries imply the equipment has not been bought as well as Apple had anticipated. Portless. For various years, summaries have indicated that Apple could inaugurate a portless iPhone. This iPhone would not emphasize a Lightning port. Rather, it would be totally wireless. This was once rumored to reach in 2021, but that did not occur. Thus, the iPhone 14 may be the first iPhone that's accessible without a Lightning port. Rather than Lightning, the iPhone 14 would consent to wireless charging as well as Apple's modern MagSafe technology. Apple is inclined to give rise to this modification at the high end initially with the 14 Pro. The lower end criteria would obey over the next few years. Chip and speed. While some reports have predicted that the iPhone 14 might utilize a modern chip generated using 3nm technology, that's no longer typical to be the case. Presently, Apple's chip partner TSMC is required to utilize an enhanced 5nm manufacturing procedure for the chip in the iPhone 14, usually pertained to as the A16. What about the display? All 2022 iPhones will incline to have an OLED exhibit like the iPhone 12 and iPhone 13 models require. It's also believed that the iPhone 14 Pro prototypes will have an adaptive refresh rate between 10Hz and 120Hz like the iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max, though perhaps the ProMotion technology will filter down to the basic criteria too. That's the rumor anyway. Furthermore, there's a conversation about a 1Hz bottom rate for the Pro models. Other rumors indicate the iPhone 14 Pro models will emphasize an always-on display, enabling you to watch some data, likely that of the iOS 16 home screen widgets, on a grayscale without opening your phone. Some assumptions recently proposed that in-display fingerprint detectors could work alongside Face ID, which is a reasonable suggestion. Moreover, the iPhone 14 Pro models could see taller displays to adapt that pill-shaped cutout we spoke of. Hardware and software. With Apple accepting 5G with all the iPhone 12 prototypes and iPhone 13 models, it's pretty much ensured all the iPhone 14 models will be 5G consistent. It's also believed the iPhone 14 Pro models will run on the A16 Bionic chip, inferring Apple proceeds with its naming habits in terms of chipsets. The iPhone 13 Pro and iPhone 13 Pro Max had an additional core for their GPU, so this could be the outbreak again for the iPhone 14 Pro models, enabling differentiation from the basic models. In terms of storage, with the iPhone 13 Pro models appearing in 128, 256, 512 GB, and 1 TB choices, we'd anticipate the similarity to the iPhone 14 Pro models, though it has been announced the Pro models might begin at 256 GB. It has also been announced that all models will have 6 GB of RAM. When will iPhone 14 come out? Expect for the iPhone 12, which was postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. New flagship iPhones are normally declared openly and disclosed in September. However, according to Quo, iPhone 14 will be disclosed sometime during the additional half of 2022. As an exception, the iPhone 14 lineup is expected to be declared in September 2022. Quo furthermore foresees that the iPhone 14 Max, or whatever it eventually turns out to be called, will be priced at under $900. So that's all for today. What do you think about it? Make sure to subscribe and smash the bell icon to get more uploads like this. Until we meet again, take care.